If you watched Cartoon Network from about 1999 to about 2008, a show like Unicorn Warriors Eternal will warm the cockles of your heart. Unicorn Warriors Eternal feels like a love letter to old school Cartoon Network, to the works of its creator Genndy Tartakovsky, and to the general audience. This show is absolutely fantastic. It's a high fantasy / steampunk series. It's got beautiful animation, incredible voice acting, and a story that is so compelling, albeit slightly confusing, and we'll get into that later. But it is absolutely golden, hence my yellow background. / golden background, I guess. This show, it does everything I want out of a show like this. It's got brilliant action in action sequences, compelling characters, a story that always keeps you intrigued. The show always keeps your attention. It never feels boring. It never feels like it's slowing down for any unnecessary purpose. The character designs are reminiscent of 1940s style characters, more rubber hose-ish if I had to find a way to describe it. It's beautiful. This is a masterpiece, and Genndy Tartakovsky sprinkles in Easter eggs and tributes to many of his older shows. Now, I've already done my first impressions of this show, and I wanted to do an overall review of Season 1, and this is going to be a spoiler-free review. So I'm just going to go and try to go into detail about my thoughts on the overall series, its highs, its lows, some things that I liked, some things that I maybe didn't like, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a rating already. This is a 10 out of 10. It's not perfect, but it is as close as you can get. It's as close as you can get, 100%. Okay, so the series, the way it's structured, at least as of this season, is it just happens. It's not something where they give you an explanation at the very beginning of who the Unicorn Warriors Eternal are, but it's not in depth. You just see them fighting, and then it goes into the story as it is in the time that we're watching. So it does a little bit of a prelude, and then it goes into the current story to give you a basic idea of how things work. In my opinion, it's not a great prelude because it doesn't explain a lot. But as the season goes on, you start to hear more and more, or you start to learn rather more and more about the characters and about their motivations, albeit briefly. This show does not spend a lot of time stopping to explain to the audience what's going on. Things just happen. Fights just break out. Characters just say things. It's not wildly incoherent, but you will have questions. You absolutely will have questions. What's going on? Who is this? Why is this happening? And the show does not explain that to you immediately. You have to stick with it, and I believe that this is by design. It's a very clever design, and I know not everybody is going to like this, but it is a fairly clever design because it keeps you intrigued and interested enough to not want to quit and to want to keep going and to know what's going to happen. Each episode feels like its own cliffhanger. It leaves you wondering, it leaves you guessing, and you leave with more questions than you have answers. And I know some people don't like that, but me, I think that that's actually really cool. With an action fantasy series like this, I feel like that fits. It would satisfy me to get some of my questions answered, but at the same time, I understand that this is a great tool for generating hype and discussion. And I think that that was the focus here, was generating hype and discussion around the series. This whole season is to build intrigue around this world, its characters, the universe, why things are the way that they are. And it doesn't explicitly answer those questions, at least not right away. And even by the end of the series, not all of those questions are answered. Or by the end of the season, I'm sorry. I keep saying series and season interchangeably. I guess if you're in the UK, you can call it a series, but in the US, we call them seasons. But this first season is a roller coaster. It moves very quickly. The episodes feel very quick. And I believe that this series is, if this was on Cartoon Network, which it technically is, it's on Adult Swim, but this could be their Avatar: The Last Airbender. Not because it's an anime in particular, but because it's a good Western animated action series / adventure, high fantasy, steampunk series. It's a lot of genres crammed into one, but it doesn't feel cluttered. Like, you know what it is. I think the best description is action, adventure, high fantasy, steampunk. That's how I would personally describe it. And those things all come together fairly well. I love the steampunk elements. There's a lot of attention to how steam technology works or would work in a Victorian setting. Because a good portion of it takes place in Victorian England if it were steampunk. And that works. It's got a lot of steampunk technology, but it still feels highly Victorian. But that's the quote-unquote modern setting, and I think it works spectacularly well. But I love the show, I love the characters, I love the story arcs. Each subsequent episode has me more invested than the last. I like how it ties several storylines together. Eventually, it does start to become more and more coherent. More questions start to become answered, or at least presumed. I was able to predict the ending. And normally that would be a bad thing, but in this case, I was glad I was right. Because if you pay attention to what's going on, then you can easily follow it. If you pay attention to what happens over the course of the series and the interactions between characters, which you should, you absolutely need to pay attention to what characters say to each other and what takes place between the characters. And pay attention to the action sequences. If you pay enough attention, then the ending will make total sense. If you don't, you might be a little lost and you might need somebody to help you fill in. But if you pay attention, it'll absolutely make sense. So it keeps you interested, it keeps you intrigued, and it can generate conversation. There's a reason I want to do a spoiler discussion video after this, because I want to talk about the story itself. I really want to talk about the story itself, because there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to speculate about for potentially the second season, and some stuff that wasn't answered in the first season. And I think that's exactly what the creators wanted with this series. I'm going to go ahead and say that I don't think it's going to be everybody's cup of tea, and I say that meaning it's not so bizarre and out there that general audiences can't enjoy it, but a lot of people who don't know how to watch a show like this are going to have a hard time following its story. They're going to be saying, wait, what? Quite a bit. But those of us, again, if you were alive during Avatar: The Last Airbender and shows like that, then you'll understand what this is doing. If you understand anime, then you'll understand what this is doing, because this takes a lot of cues from anime. It's not particularly an anime, but it's about as close as a Western studio can get to anime. And I love that. It's proving to Adult Swim that this sort of thing is viable. And I love it. I unfortunately did not see the final episode as it aired. I had to watch it, well, tonight. I had to watch it on the 3rd of July, when the final episode was towards the end of June. I forget exactly which day. But I did watch it, and I am glad. I didn't watch the first episode when it aired on Adult Swim, and I didn't watch the last one when it aired on Adult Swim. I think that's pretty ironic. But I want to encourage everybody that when Season 2 does roll around, to watch it on Adult Swim, because this show deserves to be watched on a TV, on broadcast, for the hype to build up, for the theatrical type experience, including the commercials. I think this is a show, this is old school Cartoon Network, and it deserves to be viewed like old school Cartoon Network as much as possible. It absolutely deserves it. I think that's the definitive way to watch this. Not saying that streaming it on Max is necessarily bad, it's not. But this show deserves to be seen on TV. On linear TV. It fits it so well. It really does. It harkens back to the golden age of Cartoon Network. 100%. And I miss that age so much. I spent most of today watching Cartoon Network bumpers. I watched I forgot they did a bumper campaign in between Powerhouse and the City. And it was called, I think, the best place for cartoons to be. And it had the cartoon characters, mostly Hanna-Barbera characters, at the, I believe it was the Cartoon Network headquarters in Atlanta, interacting, acting like they worked there and all that. And it was great. It was a brief bumper period, but I did remember it. if not vaguely. It did not last. I think it only lasted a year before the city bumpers were made. And I watched most of the city bumpers, and the nostalgia hit me. I was, what, 13, 14 when the city bumpers came out? So I was already in my preteen years, but I still loved Cartoon Network. I still adored it, and I think it's one of the best bumper campaigns I've ever seen. And this harkens back to that era. You know, Samurai Jack and Dexter's Lab. Gendy Tartakovsky is an absolute genius. I haven't seen Primal, and I haven't seen the later seasons of Samurai Jack that were on Adult Swim, but I'm sure both are great, and I am going to go watch. This actually makes me want to go watch those newer seasons of Samurai Jack and the seasons of Primal. But Unicorn Warriors Eternal is spectacular. I love every character. Characters I even wasn't sure if I would like, I grew to like, because it's that well written. I love the Victorian steampunk setting and the technology. I am a rail fan, and I adore steam locomotives. So seeing steam-powered cars, locomotives, steam-powered gondolas and trams, love it. Absolutely love it. Steam-powered carts and cars. You see all of that in this show. Absolutely adore that. Absolutely adore that. So, with all that being said, it's a 10 out of 10 series. Go and see it however you can see it. And if you like it, make sure when they announce the second season, when it's going to premiere, follow it on TV if possible. I want to see this thing absolutely skyrocket Adult Swim's ratings because I feel like it deserves that. It absolutely does deserve that. So, with all that being said, I will see you guys in the spoiler discussion video. This has been Super Koopa TV with another edition of Toony Talk. I will see you guys next time. God bless. Have a good one. Peace.